Number 1. A few years ago, my friend Tez and I set out on the Great American Road Trip. We were going to drive from New York to Los Angeles, zigzagging through the country for 6 weeks. We were both in our early 20s, pretty broken. As my mom had been a long-haul trucker, I suggested that we save a ton of money should we sleep in the back of our hatchback. It was a pretty cozy setup. We bought some blankets and sheets at Goodwill and cut one of them up to make some curtains. And by the end of the first week, we'd gotten so we could set up camp in about 10 minutes. Luggage moved to the front, curtains up, bedding laid down, and out for the night. We slept in parking lots, free campsites, rest areas, basically anywhere it seemed safe and semi-legal. It was never a night, after the first night, where we felt scared until the last week of the trip, in Arizona. We were near Flagstaff and had gotten pretty used to our routine. We didn't go on a set schedule and would never drive more than 3 or 4 hours a day. No destination really in mind, outside a few must-see landmarks, and we'd drive to places we found the night before on Google and take suggestions from other campers, locals, and people we'd met. We also got very good at making friends. We went to Denny's with a group of rednecks we met at a campsite in the back of their pickup, because I got hungry and overheard them saying they were gonna go. We met an 80-year-old cowboy who took us out drinking and taught us to line dance at a country bar. Hope you're still kicking, Grandpa Mac. Played the guitar with some musicians in the middle of a thunderstorm, got fed breakfast and dinner by tons of campers who invited us to hang out with them, and spent the 4th of July with a family who basically adopted us into their campsite. And Grandma gave us some weed candy. Basically, every encounter we had with a stranger was a positive one. This night didn't look to be any different. We found a free campsite on Google and drove up into the woods following our GPS. We were pretty far out of town and something seemed a little bit off when we pulled up to the campsite. There was one RV parked and 2 cars further up in the trees. We pulled up near the RV and a man opened the door. Tez waved hello and he just stared at her. His expression was completely blank. Then, as if she hadn't said anything, he just slowly closed the door again, staring at us the entire time. Figuring he just wanted some privacy and thought we'd be obnoxious, we pulled further down the road and found a flat spot to park the car. And instead of our usual routine of setting up camp immediately while it was still light out, we goofed around for a while, smoking and laughing and taking dumb pictures of ourselves. Tez pointed out a campfire further down the campsite, and we decided to go to be friendly. We'd met so many cool people in the previous 5 weeks by just going up and offering beer or just chatting, so we wandered over. Near the campfire there was 2 men, the owners of the cars we'd seen earlier, and they seemed friendly and we sat down to chat with them. They were drinking and smoking and we sat down and had a beer with them. But one of the men seemed pretty off, and we came to find out that the 2 of them didn't actually know one another. The older man was definitely on some sort of drugs. He was spinning in circles and talking about UFOs, but he seemed harmless. And this left us chatting with the younger man, who claimed to be a former park ranger. He was handsome and easygoing, and we spent several hours just chatting about our trip, families, and everything. And then he started talking about the bear. He'd seen a bear earlier in the forest, and Tez didn't believe him, and he pulled out his camera to show her photos of the bear. It was very close to the campsite, and we were both a little freaked out. It wasn't unheard of for one of us to get up and go to the bathroom in the middle of the night, so the idea of a bear hanging around in the night spooked us. The ranger just laughed, and then his expression changed completely. It's hard to describe, but his voice seemed somehow cold, and he said, "If you get out of your car in the middle of the night, it's not a bear you should be worried about." I kept waiting for the laugh or for him to nudge Tez with his elbow, jokes on the foreigner and the city girl, right? He never did. I laughed awkwardly and made a dumb joke about serial killers in the woods. My friend laughed as well and joked about the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and we moved on to another subject, but within 5 minutes the ranger had come back to it and was talking about something grabbing us from our car in the middle of the night. No matter how we tried to steer the conversation away from serial killers, he kept latching back on, and the older man was high as a kite at this point and was staring up at the stars, not talking. We'd just awkwardly laugh and sip our beer and try to get the conversation going somewhere else. Then the ranger stood up and walked towards the cooler to get another beer. And at this point it's pitch black out and I can't see anything outside the circle of light from the campfire. The beer cooler was outside of that circle. Suddenly there's a red dot in the darkness. And it took me a moment to realize that it was a camera. The ranger is holding a camera. He had taken a photo of us because I could see the screen on the digital camera light up. Now, it wasn't odd for people we met to ask to take pictures with us. My friend Tez's gorgeous dark hair, blue eyes like a young Megan Fox, and we were friendly, and people like having pictures of themselves. It was an entirely strange thing to have this person taking a photo of us without asking or even indicating that that was what he was doing. We both stared at him like deer in the headlights at this point, but instead of realizing what he was doing was a bit weird, he checks his camera, adjusts some things, and takes another photo, and this time with the flash. Not asking us to smile, no proposing a group photo, and no explanation. After this photo, he comes back to the fire and sits down, and not a word said about the photo. At this point, me and Tez are mutually freaked out, and we made some BS excuse that we need to go set up our campsite and noped the hell out of there. When we stand to leave, the UFO guy smiles and says to have a good night. Ranger, however, looks at us with a smile that doesn't reach his eyes and says, "Be careful out there. There's more than bears in the woods." Every hair on my body stood on end. I wasn't alone in my discomfort either because Tez laughed a response out and pulled me away from the campfire toward our car. We rushed back to the car, which we only found in the dark by referencing the RV, and jumped in the front seats. My friend Tez is all but hyperventilating. "Why did he take pictures of us?" I was shaking and I responded, "I read that serial killers sometimes warn their victims." She stared at me for a second, then locked the car doors. "Do you think he just took victim photos of us?" We both freaked out, and she was in full panic and turned the headlights on in the car. And I immediately yelled at her to turn them off because now he knows exactly where our car is. God knows why, but that was the only night we had not set up camp. We didn't need to tear anything down, so we just put the car in drive and floored it out of the campsite. As we got onto the dirt road, the ranger was walking towards our car with that same cold expression. "Ranger, let's not meet. Ever again." Number 2. I was a 19-year-old new mom at the time this happened. My husband, now ex, came home from work with my 17-year-old brother in tow sometime after 1 a.m. They wanted to go out and get something to eat, and as I hadn't really left the house in months, I jumped at the opportunity, so I grabbed the baby and put him in his car seat in the rear passenger seat. I called a shotgun and my husband drove, and my brother crawled in the back with the baby. We lived in a small town, so nothing is open late within this town and limits, so our only option was to go a few miles out of town to a nearby truck stop/gas station. So, the building itself is pretty small, but the parking lot is huge, and there are quite a few 18-wheelers lined up on the far side of the lot, and a few cars parked in front of the building. There are some street lamps in the lot, but there are far and few between, so that lot is mostly dark. We parked in one of the dark spots at the side of the building closest to the Hardee's entrance. The baby had fallen asleep by then, so I told my brother and husband to go on in and order for me. They do, and I immediately locked the doors as my mother had trained us to do. I'm so thankful now that she did. My husband and brother had been gone for about 5 minutes, and I was just staring straight ahead and listening to music when I caught movement out of the corner of my eye, and I turned my head to see a man walking in my direction. He was probably in his mid-30s with a mop of curly brown hair poking out from underneath a red baseball hat, and I figured he was going towards the entrance to the restaurant as it was at most 20 feet away from me, and I went back to spacing out. A couple minutes pass and I hear a car door handle jingle. I whip my head around and see the man pulling at the car door behind me. My baby's door, and he gives up and takes the 2 steps to my door. I quickly double and triple check all the doors are locked, and they are. He tries my door and fails, then walks to the other side of the car and tries those doors too. I'm freaking out and frozen in fear. This is the age of flip phones, so not everyone had a cell phone at this time, and I definitely didn't have one. He circles the car 2 more times, checking each handle as he goes. And I'm watching him this whole time and in the mirrors, and he doesn't directly look at me once. I place my hand on the horn. I made the decision to really lay into it if he pulls a weapon or tries anything else, and I take a moment to try and get a look into the store at my brother and husband through the partially obscured windows and glass door, but I couldn't see them. And I looked in the mirrors to see the creeper's whereabouts, but he was gone. I turn around in my seat and still can't see him. He must have given up and left. I relaxed but stay a little bit vigilant. Finally, my brother and husband exit the restaurant, food in hand. I cannot explain the relief that washed over me just then. I unlock the doors for them and they get in, and my brother asks, "What was that guy doing crouched behind the car?" My pulse quickened. Seriously? He's still there? Brother pointed to one of the cars in front of the building and said, "No." When we walked to the car, he jumped up and ran to that car over there. He's laying flat in the back seat. To this day, I don't know if he was after me, the baby, or the car, but whatever it was, I know he was up to no good, and I can only hope he never got the opportunity to hurt anybody. Number 3. This encounter happened in the summer of 2006 when I was 20 years old. I didn't get my driver's license until January of that year, and driving opened up so many doors for me that I took a lot of solo road trips to my friends' houses in New England and the Mid-Atlantic states. I also looked young for my age and was often mistaken for a high school student in my early 20s. I was driving alone on I-78 on a random July day on my way to visit my friend in southern Pennsylvania for a long weekend. Our parents were away and we had the house to ourselves when we were planning on drinking and hot tubbing and watching Planet Earth drunk. It had just come out. Maybe run around some cornfields at night, and I was so excited and I had a great drive, listening to good music, and it was a beautiful day for driving. Right after I crossed the border from New Jersey into Pennsylvania, I stopped at one of the first rest stops to get gas and snacks for the last part of my drive. I have tried to figure out which rest stop this was and can't ID it, but it was a gas station with a large mini-mart. Opposite the gas station was the on-ramp back to the I-78 West in parallel. To the on-ramp was a dirt road which comes into play later. I was heading into the store when a man in his late 30s or early 40s approached me, and he was a stocky guy, decently tall. I'm 5'1". Had on a plain black t-shirt and jeans with dark brown hair and a mustache/goatee. He had come out of a black pickup truck parked a few spaces away from my car. He had a super intense gaze and immediately creeped me out. He had just a crazy energy about him, and I don't really get vibes from people that often, but this was just so strange. He stood too close, and his gaze was crazy, direct, and focused. His word choice was strange, and immediately set off all of my alarms. He asked if I was from the area, despite my Connecticut license plate, and where I was headed, and if I knew anything fun to do, because he had plans later and time to kill beforehand. He had invited me to go to play mini golf or watch a movie with him, and I didn't answer any of his questions and declined his invitation to hang out, and I told him I didn't really know the area and walked away towards the store. I was blown away that he had asked me to go somewhere with him, and it was so random and uncomfortable. As I was walking away, he actually screamed out, "You're gorgeous," and the volume and tone made my hair stand on end. It was super aggressive and inappropriate, and he startled the family walking out of the store. It was so loud. I didn't turn around, but went inside. He came into the store shortly after and was staring at me, so I went to use the bathroom and stayed in for at least 10 minutes texting my friend about this creep. When I came out, he wasn't in the store anymore, so I took my time buying drinks and snacks. Sour bite crawlers and trail mix being my obligatory road trip food. I went out to gas up my car. I was relieved his car was gone and started thinking about the rest of my drive and getting excited to see my friend. When I pulled up to the road to get back on the highway, I heard somebody persistently honking his horn and see this creep show on the dirt road parallel to the on-ramp in his truck, honking, shouting, waving at me to drive over to him. He was directly facing the gas station and had been waiting for me to pull up. I immediately freaked out and jumped on the on-ramp back to I-78. He pulled onto the highway after me, and I called my friend, extremely scared. I drove so fast and probably dangerously, and looking back, I am lucky I didn't get into an accident, but I didn't know what to do. He didn't follow me for that long, and I think after a few exits he actually pulled off. My friend and I had a backup plan that if I saw his car again, she would direct me to a police station the next town over from her house, instead of going directly there and leading some freak to us. I didn't see the car again and went to my friend's, but the last hours of my drive I was extremely tense and anxious. I remember checking my mirrors regularly for this black pickup truck. It all ended well. I got to my friend's house safely and we had a nice weekend. The encounter was definitely creepy, but over the years I didn't put much thought into it. A few years ago, around 2014, I was talking with another friend who was big into serial killers and mentioned my encounter jokingly, suggesting this was a serial killer I had met, and told her my experience. She was fascinated and wanted to Google active serial killers in the Pennsylvania area at the time, and the first hit was for Adam Leroy Lane, and he looked almost exactly like the man I met back in 2006. Obviously, it could be my mind filling in the blanks, but the basic characteristics, 40s, tall but stocky, and brown hair with a mustache or goatee, and the time/area all match. In my memory, he was a little bit slimmer than the pictures, and it was 2006, not 2007, when he actually got convicted of murdering women, but still, it's an odd coincidence, and one I've never forgotten. I was 17 when this story happened, 3 years ago from now. I was working at an old pizza shop right on the edge of my town. For context, the town I was in is an affluent suburban town surrounded by bypass, which loops around the town. Around my town is some farmland and some main roads where all of the blue-collar workers moved to after the town was gentrified 10 to 15 years back. This pizza shop was around for 20 years and was very catered to these same blue-collar workers. It's around 9 p.m. and a call comes in for 2 pizzas and 2 liters of soda. I'm the only driver in, so I have to take the delivery out, and it's about a 10-minute drive to get to the location. There I have to drive up a long gravel driveway that took 5 minutes to get up. My car really couldn't handle the gravel and how rough it was. Arriving at the place, I see a nice house and 2 barns plotted across the land with wheat 5 to 6 feet tall surrounding the whole property. I've always been really anxious around farms because of how creepy I think they are. Being at this place when I felt truly all alone really started to make my anxiety flare. I decided to call the number on the order because I have no idea where this guy wants me to drop off this food. After about another 5 minutes of absolute silence, the man picks up. He had a very deep and raspy voice, like he's been struck as a career smoker, which didn't do anything to help me feel better. I was told to meet him at his truck and the far barn on his property. I am now properly shitting myself as my mind races of all the worst possible things that could happen to me, and I pull myself together and muster further into this guy's property. I see the man's truck as I round one of those cylinder storage units where I see his F-150 and him inside. Instead of getting out, I call him and ask him how we should do the transaction, and in that same deep voice, he instructs me to get out of my car, put all the food onto his truck bed. Since he paid with his credit card already, I thought this would have been over in 10 seconds, so I do what he told me to do, and walk over to the passenger window so that he can sign his receipt. The man looks to be around his mid-40s, heavy set with a scraggly black beard and a trucker hat, and I'm a pretty skinny guy, so with my mind already racing on the being kidnapped or murdered part, I really didn't feel safe around this guy. So I asked him if he has a pen on him, because I forgot to bring my own. I was pretty bad at my job, but he didn't have any cash on him. He stares at me with these cold eyes and points into the back of his truck, saying to me, "If you ask for a tip, I'm going to be sticking this tip down your fucking throat," where he has a double-barrel shotgun just in the back of his car. I'm frozen in fear as I'm registering that this man has just threatened to kill me, and not only that, but this is the second time that this has happened this shift. Yes, I kid you effing not. This was the first time because I messed up the address for a house, and a man in his 60s wearing a cowboy hat and an effing WWE belt comes outside and says he has the right to shoot trespassers when I was just trying to see if I was at the right house. The only thing I can muster out is, okay. And I get back into my car and I get the F out of that farm. I was going so fast on that road that I effed up my car from my car bouncing around on the gravel path, so I go 80 all the way back to the pizza parlor where I tell my coworkers what happened, and none of my coworkers took me seriously and just thought I was playing this up for a joke. I go home and forget about it pretty quickly, but a year later I'm working the lunch shift as the same man calls in and orders a pizza. Now at this point I'm refusing to take this order. Well, this was during COVID and the place was on its last legs already, so management forced me into going anyways. It was only 1 to 2 p.m. on a Sunday, so at least my fear of the dark would be covered. I get there and the man is waiting for me at his actual house, and he recognized me and, out of all things, started apologizing to me for what he said. He was excusing it, saying that he just started going through divorce and was struggling with his emotions. I just wanted the whole thing to be over with, and he gave me $60 for what happened, but still, to this day, to the man on the farm, I hope we never meet again.